Thank you so much again for coming for the weekend. I've had a ball. I hope you guys have learned something, and obviously it's good to see some new faces out there yesterday driving the tracks and learning a few things. Obviously it's always good to see people at the start of the day absolutely terrified of going down some tracks, and by the end of the day like, oh, that was too easy, and they're doing it with confidence and learnt and bouncing ideas off other people, and obviously also sitting around the campfire and learning people's pasts and what they do and why they were stupid enough to get a Unimog. Sorry, did I say that out loud?
You need to be prepared after that. Don't wait until the last second. Just go through a sequence to pull it out. So you see that it's coming, do it before you start going downhill, don't you?
I personally would drive in the front gate here, fold it with the pedal.
Fold it out.
Yeah. That's it. When you pull back onto the highway, fold it away again. Places like Fraser Island, leave the pedal tucked away, because at the end of the day, sand is sand. You're not going to slide down a sand hill unless it's Abu Dhabi. Or Chris would probably be able to tell us a few stories about that, wherever he is. But yeah, typically anywhere it's arduous, just fold it out. Cape York, just as soon as you get up there in the gravel, fold it out. It's not a hard thing to do. Push your clutch in. It's not like you're changing a lot of gears. These ones. So anyone that knows the difference, in the new trucks we've got UHE and then we've got UGE. UGE is the rounded cab, or the more implement carrier. So it does have a lot less ground clearance, even though it has portal axles and everything. It has full link independent suspension, which does hang down a little bit lower than the rest. We can also get them out to 4.5 metre wheelbase, which they come from a 2.8 metre wheelbase in a U219 right up to a 4.5 metre wheelbase, and we can stretch any of them in basically several lengths. I won't say any length. Now with the UGE it's a lot lower. It still has, in your instance, a 300 horsepower motor, so you've got a hell of a lot more horsepower, a hell of a lot more torque than the UHEs. It still has exactly the same amount of traction, so if you've got a steep flat hill, you'll probably pull up that hill a hell of a lot better than one of these. You just have to be very mindful, and once you've driven around for a couple of months, you'll know what does work and doesn't work. In those instances, whoever's the driver, I'd say Karina's going to be the driver. Will, you're out there going with your walkie-talkie, take it easy, take it easy. Well, stop, this is too much for us. Or, sweet, we know we can clear a boulder that high or that high, and you'll get used to what you can and can't clear. I certainly wouldn't take it up those tracks over there, but I'd be pretty confident you'll do most of those. Yep.
You've got to be mindful with your 4.5 metre on UGEs, that you'll ramp over with 2 wheels. You've got your radiator there. We know an operator who tried this on the Gymkhana track and actually ruptured his radiator.
Oh, nice.
And as Dan said, it's an implement carrier. So, but it's still a capable truck. What Scotty explained about 4x2 and 4x4, yours is a 4x4. And through the transfer case, it's 40-60 split. So when you've got your diff lockers, you go transfer case 50-50, and then you go rear diff, forward diff. So yours is slightly different setup on the UGE.
Oh, so mine is a...
yours is a constant forward drive.
Yeah,
so it's a 40-60 split, 40 of the drive line.
So it's got a centre diff, is that what you're saying?
So it's 40-60, so 40 front, 60, and when you turn the first click, you go 50-50, so your ratio is direct through, and then you've got rear diff, front diff. So UGE is slightly different animal, but just as capable, but you've got to be mindful of your ramp over.
And also because you got the longer wheelbase, the reason I penalised Chris yesterday, is he here? Chris and Marcus, they got a nice short wheelbase, so they could come in here and drive around, and their back wheels are going to pretty almost follow them. Whereas your truck, longer wheelbase,
they're going to try to hold the
those, it's going to come in here, and then this one's going to come around here. So
it's more like a semi.
Nearly, but I guess in saying that, anyone that has a stretch 79 series, you're going to probably turn quicker than they will. Alrighty, any other questions in relation to anything Unimog related or otherwise? Down to driver ability, driver's sense. It's kind of like, is Ben here? Ben, my mechanic? Thankfully he's got a massive snap-on toolbox, but he knows how to use that snap-on toolbox. But there's a lot of guys out there, first year apprentice will go buy a $50,000 snap-on toolbox. Doesn't mean you're a good mechanic. Now exactly the same thing with the Unimog. You've basically got the snap-on of the four-wheel drive. It's the world's most capable four-wheel drive. Doesn't necessarily mean it's going to take you everywhere if you've got no idea how to drive it. So another thing with diff locks as well, I always say use them to get you out of the shit, not further into the shit. So if you're driving along, you see a mud hole and you go, oh yeah, forward diff locks, you're going to drive to the point of not getting out again. So you'll drive in, yep, I'm stuck, hang on, I've got no option because I drove in its maximum capacity. If you drive in four-wheel drive, get there, oh, it's a little bit sticky, rear diff locks, oh, hang on, I'm moving again, oh, four-wheel drive, yep, I'm through this. Or at least You come in, I know I drove in here in four-wheel drive, diff locks, drive yourself back out of it again.
Just to add also again for people with the new trucks, Scotty explained about descent, using your diff locks downhill, doing descent. Use on the newer trucks, use your engine brakes, because the engine management system will actually see that as a torque request, and it actually do engine retardation through there, so you don't have to touch the brake. When we do driver training with Victoria State Fire, we actually drive off a rock face down a mountain, literally drive off, so the crew are panicking. We've got a dual cab and we're driving down a descent like this with working gears on, and they are driving down the rock face because they've got working group, and they're driving down, and when they're driving down, because you've physically got your gear ratios that low, you are driving down the mountainside. It's quite surreal. But when they take off their foot off the throttle, because the engine brake's on, the engine management system goes torque request, it starts retarding the engine, so you don't have to brake. It's literally just on and off the throttle all the way down, and to actually have that experience, maybe another year we could even demonstrate that going down it.
I've taken a few people around some of these tracks yesterday, and yeah, exactly the same thing. Literally, you're hanging on your seatbelt, and it's just brrr, and the truck is just moving, not touching the brakes or anything, and it's just controlling itself down the hill.
So a lot of people tend to run away, and that's when they panic. And their panic sets in. First thing they do is clutch in and try and brake. And as Scotty pointed out, when you're on loose ground, you'll break traction and you'll slide down the hill. Now, I had a very nice experience up in Mosman with some driver training on 4x4 at Tego, with a big cherry picker on the back in bush. And they were driving downhill, being told and taught what to do. The guy just panicked, he was a young guy, and just went, stuff this, slammed his foot on the brakes, and the whole thing just slid down and cleared down the mountainside. Couldn't stop it. Once you break traction, that's it, you're never going to recover.
Also, with that as well, obviously if you're driving down full diff locks on, you've got the same amount of traction on each wheel. Yeah, the engine is doing the braking for you, evenly spread. As soon as you, particularly when you're going down a hill, as soon as you hit the clutch in, hit the brakes, you've only got two wheels braking, because all the weight's off the rear axle, so your proportioning valves just sending all the braking to the front. You might have 10% here and 90% at the front. You've now got two wheels trying to grab hold of that thing that you were already struggling with. So it's never a good idea. People come in to buy a truck, they're 99% of the time they're like, oh, I'm going to buy a motorhome, I'm never going to need a working group because I'm not going to go that serious four-wheel driving. But you don't have to be in serious situation. Even you be in a completely flat paddock and you're driving through melon holes or wombat holes, the truck will literally be flopping from side to side. So chuck it in working group, just idle your way through it, and it's literally just a nice walk in. And if you feel like you're nice and slow, you feel, oh, hang on a minute, this is a little bit awkward, I might stop and just reverse out of this slowly, as opposed to having that momentum to get you up a hill or whatever it might be. And by the time you feel this is a bit awkward because you're going a lot faster, geez, probably more so. There's more chance of you soiling your pants than the thing falling over, but it's not a nice feeling to go, oh crap, that wasn't fun.
Yeah. One example to give you that we do driver training for DELP, which is the Department of Energy, Land, Water and Planning, which is State Forest Victoria. They've got 67 Unimogs, U5000s. They carry 4,000 litres of water and 1,000 litres of foam. They are super heavy, they're special, they're 14.1 tonne. Now we actually, when we do driver training, the centre of gravity exercise, some of them in the classroom, because they 2 days of classroom before they're allowed in the truck. So the importance of this asset they're going to drive a $700,000 Unimog off-road in worse country than this. The centre of gravity, some people go, can I ask a question, Bertie? And I go, yep. And they go, it's 38% tilt. When I'm looking at the stats here, 38 degrees. Geez, we can go fair traverse across the mountainside and that. And what we do is obviously change the centre of gravity from 38 degrees tilt. By changing that centre of gravity, that's from the manufacturer's design. Then you change that centre of gravity from here and put 5,000 litres of water and foam on, the centre of gravity goes here. And what we do with the driver training is they go out empty and they get to know their truck. They get to know unladen mass of their truck, and they fill the truck and their arseholes are going like this, they've got shit, oh wow. And the tilt test we did with those empty was 28 degrees. Now when we loaded them up with foam and water and sent them out, oh, you should see their faces. There's some scary moments, and this is why we do it, exactly that. So it goes from 28 degrees tilt to about 22 degrees tilt, and we actually put them on a tilt bed and actually test them to actually get certification for government, because obviously legislation and liability. But it's actually quite interesting. So when you say about motorhomes and seeing some of the guys yesterday doing this track, Yeah, it's a good exercise to do. Daniel gets you to drive in motorhomes, and if you haven't done it this time round and you're fortunate enough to have a truck and be here next year with a truck, with a motorhome, do it. It's exactly that. We've seen some nasty things.
With the cab and the body, they obviously do move independently of each other, so just because your cab has gotten past something, your body's most likely actually facing the other way, so that.
And or your cab might be higher.
Yeah, and then so your cab might be facing this way, and you're like, cool, my whole body's facing that way, but your body's actually out that way.
Another 400 mil further out that way than it was 10 minutes ago.
Yeah. So then, obviously, that tree that you thought you were getting round is now stuck in the middle.
Tree moved.
Yeah. Yeah, of course it was the tree.
Patrol or a Land Cruiser and whatnot, you'll notice, okay, I've got this much room between my diffs and my bump stop, and the favourite thing to do is to go and put a 2, 4, 6, 10 inch lift in them. Now, that's because they've got no chassis twist or very limited chassis twist. If you look under a Unimog, even a brand new one with brand new springs, you've probably only got about that much bump in your front axle. Now, but yet they articulate a hell of a lot more than a Patrol would from factory. And that's because of that chassis twist. So most of your suspension travel is actually in the chassis twist of a Mog. It's also the reason why we don't do any suspension lifts, why we don't recommend it. Obviously the higher you go, the higher the centre of gravity. So if we're going to push up our suspension by 100 mil, that you're pushing up, your diffs are going to stay on the ground, they're 300 kilos each. The other 6.5, 7, 8 tonne is going to be pushed up by 100 mil, which is a bloody big difference when you've got that much weight. So obviously what we do when we do want to get some more clearance for our front wheels is we do that cab lift and just push up the cab, which is about 300 kilos, and only push that section up. Everything else stays down low.
You'd all hear your doings and boings when you were doing tracks probably yesterday. Some of the biggest things that we get from customers is like, something wrong with my truck, I've got doings and boings, as I call it, get it quite often, and it's because, as Phil said, you get 33 degrees opposite articulation between your front and rear axles, so your torque tubes are allowing the articulation. If you haven't done so, obviously when you're driving a gnarly track, someone get out and actually have a look and stop and actually see how they articulate, and the doings and boings are quite normal. It's very rare they'll pop a spring, very rare, but if you're in real arduous and nasty situations, we have come across where a spring has actually left the axle because you've gone really arduous off-road and it's extended the foot, as I call it. So they compress and then extend the foot, so they actually, that's how you maintain your traction all the while. And that's the benefit of Unimog, the torque tube and the setup. It's not changed over many decades, and that's what is good about Unimog. You always remain traction and foothold. Very rarely you'll see it lifting a wheel, unless you're at a fire brigade and you're pushing them to the extreme.
or your Mick.
Or your Mick. Mick's in a different category. There's the fire brigade and there's Mick.
With as far as a spring becoming dislodged, it's typically a U1300, so all your 1700s, they're bolted in top and bottom, all the new trucks bolted in top and bottom, whereas on a 1300 they've got a basic cage. So set the springs at the bottom, the spring sits around it. If you extend it too far, the spring will go doing out the side, you come back down and you're sitting like this. So if anyone's got a 1300 here, just be mindful of that. They do articulate very, very well, but just be careful that if you do go too far, your spring's going to poke out the side.
And if that does, you can usually reverse back over whatever obstacle you've just done, put it and ratchet strap, put it back in. Yeah. Don't have the missus standing there and going, yeah, keep going, Bill. Yeah, keep going. Don't do that. I've seen that done before, and that's not big bars and burly blokes. Yeah, we'll get them in there, and this spring, you're fighting this spring and all that torque and mass and energy of that truck.
The best thing you can do is just jam on your brakes and you stall it going uphill. Okay. So you've come up to a rock step and it's just scrabbling away and it's not making any more progress. So to get yourself out of the situation, you jam on your foot brake and then you immediately put on your hand brake. Okay, so you've got all four wheels locked in, and only then do you put your foot on the clutch and you stick it in reverse with the engine still off. Okay, so and then you can take your handbrake off, and then you're on your foot brake. Okay, so you then start slowly easing your foot off the foot brake, so that now it's the engine holding all four wheels that you've got in four-wheel drive. It'll hold all four wheels on the engine through your gearbox down to the wheels. Okay, so now you can take both feet off and you're going to plant your feet on the floor of your cab, okay? You're not going to touch any of the pedals, okay? So then you just you also check your steer wheels, not your steering wheel. You look out the cab and you look at your steer wheels and make sure they're lined up with directly straight down the hill. And then you put your both hands on the steering wheel, your thumbs out of the middle of the steering wheel, and then you flick the ignition on so the engine starts rotating, and then you drive it down the hill in control, okay? So it's all about maintaining control of your vehicle, and you're doing things very, very slowly, of course. Hopefully you've got working group gears, and you'll probably have it in third or fourth, and yeah, you just drive it back down the hill.
To just add to that, just what's happening there is the clutch you don't touch. So when you stall out, your clutch is closed. When you put your foot on the clutch, you separate drive. So if your clutch is not being touched, your clutch is closed. So all that torque through the engine, all through your drive line, is being controlled through your clutch. That's why you don't clutch out. Because if you clutch out, you separate the clutch, you lose the torque in the drive line, the torque is holding the trucks, and you roll away. So when you are doing that, and as Phil said, you start up in gear, you don't touch the clutch. You start it up in gear, and it straight away drives the vehicle because the clutch is not separated.
You're better off practicing. Go and find one of those little tiny hills here. You're 5 metres up a slight slope, and practice it. Because if you do it out there and it's all panic stations and like, shit, what was Phil saying?
Clutch in, foot brake.
It's got to be muscle memory, okay? But the best thing you can do in the bush, as Bertie was saying, like when you're going downhill too, you plant that clutch foot firmly on the floor, and you make a conscious effort to keep that foot off the clutch.
So if you're going to be in that situation, you should be manual gears, manual clutch. You know, you've got auto manual gears, pedal out, manual clutch. And then you can do it. Just to clear up, we don't have automatic trucks. They're automated. They're automated. So when people talk about autos with Unimogs, they're automated. Exactly the same box between a manual and an automated. So if you've got one that's got EAS and one doesn't have EAS, which is the electro auto shift, but they are exactly the same UG 100 gearbox in that sort of variant of truck. One has automation, what they call sales code G48, and one doesn't. So it's just the automation. So yeah, that's some different logic behind it on that truck. But when we talk about automatic, we're automated, not more. Some trucks you can get four-wheel park, which just helps for better anchorage for when you're actually winching on hills and stuff. But depends on what spec of truck it is. But
some of the gear you can get, it'll have a little telltale, like a little sheath over it, and it'll fade over time once it turns a different colour. You know, some manufacturers use that sort of thing, but usually that'll turn a different colour well before the ropes age. It's pretty hardy stuff. It doesn't really age as much as the manufacturers will let on. I've used some pretty hairy looking, old looking faded Dyneema rope, and I've tested it on a load cell, and it's still come up pretty good. Yeah.
Two things. We always put a cover. If any of our front winches, it's either got a bag over it or it's got the little shiny Unidan cover over the top of them, just to keep them out of the sun. Secondly, if anybody's bought a Runba winch, they're part of their warranty. If you ever buy one off us, we always say this to you. Hopefully we always say it to you. Every month, you've got to pull that winch out, full length, and wind it back in. So the reason for that is to heat the motor up, because you will get condensation in there, warms the motor up, cooks off any condensation, and that's part of your warranty thing. So if you ever do have an issue with one, not that we ever do, have an issue, the first thing they're going to ask you is, do you wind the winch out every month? And of course you're going to say, yes I do. So while you're doing that every month, you're just going to check the condition of your rope as well. So, and if you find that the first 3 wraps or so are knackered, and you've got a really good, another 28 metres to go, 20 metres to go, I wouldn't throw that throw it in the bin. Get someone to resplice the end of it and make it a recovery strap for yourselves.
Bertie's just said it's probably good to check the winch rope as well if you've done like fording through water, mud, whatever, because you never know what's going to get in there and dry up and do things.
Now, for those of you who have already been out and about in your Unimog, everybody thinks they're a free tow truck, so which we're forever helping other people out recovering them. The first thing always ask them is, have you got any recovery gear, mate? Without fail, every single time they're like, oh no, I got no recovery gear. I'm like, well, what were you planning on doing? How are you getting out of this? So, as we all know, recovery gear costs a lot of money. Every time you use it, it's going to get damaged, it's covered in mud, you've got to clean it, etc., etc. So always try and put it back on them. If they've got no recovery gear, I've never done it, but I would highly recommend saying, guys, this has cost me $1,000, $2,000. What are you going to give me to get you out of this situation? Because over time, it's just your gear. So many people out there are like, oh, good Samaritan. And then when it's time for you to go and use your own gear, it's knackered. So yeah, don't be ashamed to go, because as big trucks, people think you're there to rescue them. Got to the ramps there's two caravans, bogged to the axles, and they're mucking around. I said, oh, no worries, buddy, I'll come and I'll tow you over. So reversed up. He had his own gear, so hooked him on and just dragged him on. I said to him, mate, don't touch the accelerator, I'll just tow you across. Anyway, the whole way, he's just rooster tailing it. So I've just skull dragged him the whole way across. And I said, oh, do you want to unhook and go back and get your mate? He goes, oh, can you? I'm like, well, he's your mate. But anyway, yep, 8th gear reverse, across the island again, across the headland. Hooked him up, same thing, get to the other side, oh mate, you deserve a beer. And this is Tiani's comment, and I said, yeah, take them. And there's like a carton of beer sitting there on the back of his ute. I'm like, nothing. So 2 recoveries, not a cent.
So the question was asked too, what rotates? Does the rope slide around the aluminium ring, or does the aluminium ring slide around the soft shackle? And so that's the latter. The aluminium ring actually slides around on the soft shackle. That's why the soft shackles have that nice big sheath over them, and so there's not a lot of friction between that aluminium and that sheath, and it allows it to spin freely with pretty minimal resistance. And so as long as you make sure that sheath is in there where the soft shackle, where the actual spindle is rotating, then you won't do any damage to your soft shackle itself.
On that as well, if you notice in those kits, they come in little, basically feel like felt bags. If you have a sharp edge on that, it's just going to chop straight through your soft shackle. So just make sure they're in good condition. Store them correctly. If you do get a dint in there, a bit of sandpaper, file it out so it is a nice smooth surface again.
And if you use it in sand, you might actually have to wash your Spectra gear to get all that grit out of it, because the grit will actually start grinding as well too.
Yep. Very good. Wrap it up?
Yeah.
Thanks for your valid questions. It's always good. I learn a lot every time I come here as well, so, and I hope you guys do too. Thank you.